Nate, good morning. Overnight, we saw Brian Hooker at the hospital. He was receiving medical care. He was handcuffed. He was wearing pajamas as he was receiving care for a knee injury that he says he received while being taken into custody after he went overboard in his sailboat.
This morning, the American man arrested for his wife's disappearance in the Bahamas, maintaining his innocence. His attorney saying he's devastated.
He's heartbroken. And then to be arrested while assisting the police with their investigation, it is very traumatic for him.
59-year-old Brian Hooker, now in custody in Freeport, held after his wife Lynette reportedly vanished at sea Saturday night.
So we have a twist in this case of Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker. There was past domestic violence, but wait till you hear who was arrested. Plus, friends of the family are speaking out. There's a couple friends who are pretty much going against Brian, and there's one that sounds like he's with Brian. And Brian fell out the boat too? Let's go. Fugitive TV. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome to Fugitive TV. I am your host, Ray Marcel. And what we do is we take a look at cases of missing individuals or cases that need a bigger spotlight or cases that, hey, we need to find out who did it. And this is one of those cases. Now, sometimes we take a look at these cases from a different point of view. As you see, I was once a fugitive on the run from the law myself. That's why it's called Fugitive TV. I ran from the law after I committed some white collar crime for about 15 years. Lived in different countries. I was able to change my name multiple times, and then I turned myself in. Now I'm here. I own multiple businesses. I'm talking to you on this channel, and I help other family members locate loved ones or people that need to be brought to justice. Well, this case right here definitely needs spotlight, and sometimes this case needs to be, I guess, some common sense needs to be brought into this. A little bit of questions that you might not be hearing from the big media. Well, this is the case of Lynette Hooker, Lynette and Brian Hooker. Now, if you didn't see my prior video or you don't know about this case, I'm just going to run it down for you real quick. Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker were married for 25 years. They were in the Caribbean or the Caribbean islands off of I think it was Hopetown. I've never been out there, so I'm not sure, but Hopetown, I believe it was, around that area and around the area of Clay. Well, they were taking a dinghy, okay? They went out, had some food, went to dinner, got into a dinghy. And if you don't know what a dinghy is a small little boat that you use to transport from land to the bigger boat. So the dinghy usually attaches to the bigger boat, okay? So if the bigger boat, you can't, anchor it by the shore somewhere, you got to take the dinghy, and you take the dinghy where you're going, and you leave the bigger boat anchored out at sea. So that's what a dinghy is. The one they have was 8 foot long, and it says hard bottom. And I'm not really a boater, so I'm guessing you have some soft bottoms too. And as far as I know, they're inflatable. So this is inflatable with a hard bottom and a motor. So they took the dinghy. They left from getting food. It was around 7:30 at night, Saturday night. And they left to go to the bigger boat. Well, Lynette didn't make it. Apparently, from Brian's story, is that she fell overboard. And when she fell overboard, the current and the wind took her away from the dinghy. And not only that, she started swimming towards shore. Okay? Which I find very odd. And we're going to get into that. Not only did she fall overboard and start swinging towards shore, there's a cutoff, like a key you can put into the ignition and cut it off. When she fell off, apparently she had the key. We're going to get into that too. So this is the backstory in case you don't know what has happened, okay? Now, in my prior video, I brought up the daughter. Now, Lynette and Brian have been married for 25 years, but this is Lynette's first. She has a prior and they have a kid together named Carly, okay? So Brian is Carly's stepfather. Carly came out and said there's been domestic issues in the past. She didn't really clarify, but she said there's domestic issues in the past, that he has threatened to choke her out before and threatened to throw her overboard. Not only that, Brian has his own daughter. She said that he has choked her out in front of her when they were little, when they were children, I guess. And the police had to get called over that, and Brian had to go to court over that.
59-year-old Brian Hooker, now in custody in Freeport, held after his wife Lynette reportedly vanished at sea Saturday night. Brian telling police their 8.5-foot dinghy encountered poor weather on their way to their sailboat, and Lynette fell overboard along with the boat's key, swept away by the current.
He is not saying he had any intention to harm her or kill her. He is not saying that he did any action that caused her death. He's saying she fell.
Allegedly, that's what Carly is saying, okay? So once we all heard that, we're all like, oh man, yeah, okay, yeah, wow. So there's a little bit of twist going on, okay, about their past of Brian and Lynette. Not only that, there's a neighbor that's speaking up about Brian and how he acts. And there's messages that Brian sent to somebody via Facebook that kind of changes the story a little bit. And you might give him a side eye, which you're going to compare, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at the obvious first real quick, as in the prior domestic stuff, okay? So Carly said that in the past, alcohol played a big factor. Matter of fact, apparently they've broken up before. They were actually broken up allegedly before they took this little trip they did. And this was, I guess, a way to candlelight things. Carly said when they drank alcohol though, that's when everything would mess up. Things would get violent. They would yell, shout, things like that, okay? Well, right now we're going to take a look at a prior, okay, domestic violence case involving both of those two. All right, so right here we have, this is from people.com, People Magazine. Inside the past domestic violence call involving couple in the Bahamas that went the overboard case, okay? Now, it actually tells you that Lynette Hooker was arrested following an alleged domestic violence incident in 2015. Now, this right here, in case you don't know, this right here is the dinghy. You see how small this is? All right. And you see there's an engine right there. So this is how small the dinghy is. All right. Now, this goes on to say more than a decade before she disappeared in the Bahamas while on a dinghy with her husband, Lynette Hooker was allegedly involved in a domestic violence incident. Lynette, who was from Michigan, disappeared after she reportedly fell overboard on a dinghy after she and her husband, Brian Hooker, headed from Hopetown to Elbow Cay in the Bahamas on April 4th. Brian was Brian was actually now here's the part that's I don't know if there's a barrier going on or confusion. So this right here says Brian was arrested. So if you guys been following this, he wasn't arrested at first, but this right here says Brian was arrested. Other reports are saying that Brian has been held for questioning. That's two different things. Arrested and held for questioning is two different things. Arrested means you've been charged. Far as we know of, he hasn't been charged, so he's being held for questioning right now in connection with his wife's disappearance, according to the police, who have not yet said if he will be charged with a crime. Prior to her stepfather's arrest, Lynette's daughter, Carly, who I told you about, said, "There have been prior issues brought to my attention which may be important for any thorough investigation," referring to Lynette and Brian's relationship. According to a 2015 police report obtained by People, Lynette was arrested in Kentwood, Michigan, following an incident in which she and Brian each accused each other of assault. So they both accused each other of assault during this incident, okay? The police report stated that Brian had blood coming from his nose and that he claimed his wife had struck him in the face. Lynette, who police said was highly intoxicated, so this plays in to the drinking part. Lynette, who police said was highly intoxicated, was arrested on charges of assault and battery, which were dropped after it was determined there was insufficient evidence as to who started the assault. So basically, it sounds like they were telling on each other. She did this, he did this, he did this. So they just dropped it. Following Brian's arrest in the Bahamas, remember, it's not an arrest as of this moment. Attorney Terrell A. Butler said her client, and so basically her client denies any wrongdoing. Her client denies it, okay? Prior to his arrest, Brian wrote on Facebook that unpredictable seas and high winds caused Lynette to fall overboard, okay? Now, here's some of the questions I had when I first heard this. And if you saw my first video, you would heard. Plus, there's a couple more questions the longer I sit and think about this. For one, if she fell overboard and the current took her away, okay, I can see that's understandable. Now, that's understandable if the dinghy or the boat they're in is anchored. But if the dinghy or the boat they're in is not anchored, wouldn't the boat flow with the current with her? So, example, if the current's going this way, right, and she fell in the water and the current starts taking away, wouldn't the boat kind of go with the current too? Which means he has a chance, especially if he's paddling or whatever, to jump in and save her, paddle and save her. Now, apparently there was 2 life jackets or 2 life-saving devices on board. Apparently he did throw a device on board, to her. My question is, how fast was his current, or how slow was his reaction that she fell overboard, that he sat there and watched her float away and then decided to try and throw a device to her? Now, Brian said that she was swimming towards shore. This only makes sense if the current was going towards shore, because as far as I know, you are taught not to swim towards the current because you will lose energy. Swim with the current. So if the current is going towards shore, I guess it would make sense. But once again, she just fell, right? If she just fell. Now, I can see maybe she ran and jumped far, but she just fell. So if she just fell overboard and she pops right back up, she should not be too far away from the boat or dinghy, especially if the dinghy is like right there. So that part never made sense to me. Now we're going to take a look at one of the friends says. One of his friends are speaking out about this. So let's take a look at what he's saying. So this says American couple's Bahamas dinghy was ill-equipped for conditions. Night of wife's disappearance. See, this is where it all gets strange and a mystery, and where you got to figure out if it was an accident or was it on purpose, okay? Because right here it's telling you the conditions were bad and they weren't meant for a dinghy. So we're going to read this. Winds were gusting at around 26 knots near Hopetown the night Lynette Hooker went missing from an 8-foot dinghy. After Brian Hooker arrest and the disappearance of his wife, Lynette, in the Bahamas, a man who was friends with the couple knew them from the Caribbean paradise, says that their small dinghy was underpowered and undersized for the conditions they face. Officials in the Bahamas said Lynette Hooker, 55, and Brian Hooker, 58, left Hopetown's Abaco Inn at around 7:30 p.m. on Saturday and went on a smaller boat referred to as a dinghy to travel to their yacht. Brian Hooker reportedly told officials that Lynette fell into the water with the ignition key, which caused the engine to cut off. So, like I told you, apparently she fell into the water with the key. So if she fell into the water with the key, that would mean the engine fell off, the engine cut off, right? So that means if the engine cuts off, the boat shouldn't be really going. It got cut off, especially if there is a current going towards shore. Remember, he said she was swimming away from the boat going towards shore. So that would mean that the dinghy would be going away from the shore going into the current, right? So if the engine cut off, it would cut off. And if she fell overboard, it's going to start pushing him back. That's what you would think logically. So it says Brian Hooker was arrested by Bahamas authorities on Wednesday night, but hasn't been charged with their crimes. Once again, he's only in there for questioning. A man who knew Brian and Lynette Hooker in the Bahamas told Fox Digital that conditions on the night the American woman went missing were less than ideal, especially considered the fact that they were on an 8-foot dinghy, as authorities have said. The man is also an American, asked to remain anonymous, so he doesn't want to give out his identity, of course, because I guess he's friends with both of them. Their dinghy was really just too small to be out in those conditions. Their 8-foot hard bottom dinghy with that electric motor, you should be out anything more than like 12 max or 15 knots. It's really underpowered, undersized for the condition they were in. Winds in Hopetown area gusting at around 26 knots on Saturday night, according to review of the data by Fox Weather. If the wind is blowing 30 knots, you're moving at 4 feet in the opposite direction every 1 second. So it's saying right now, if the wind is blowing 30 knots, you're moving at 4 feet in the opposite direction every 1 second. Now, I'm not a boater, so I don't know if this is true. So 1,000. So you're moving at 4 feet, okay, which is pretty much the size of a toddler or a child, right? So every toddler or small child, every second you move if the wind is blowing that much. So if the wind is blowing that much, once again, wouldn't it be blowing a dinghy that way? So even an Olympic swimmer would have a hard time getting back on. It would be impossible for two people that are 55, 58 to reunite, the man said. I've done 3 dinghy rescues in 3 weeks. Really, I mean, it's crazy. The man, who was a sailor himself alongside his wife, Wife Lynette, are a couple what seemed to be a great marriage. They seem very much happiest of people, an extremely happy relationship, people to aspire in a sailing and cruising life. The friend of Brian and Lynette Hooker told Fox News Digital there are common misconceptions about the engine key. Noting that in rough water, it's sometimes the lighter person who drives while the heavier one sits in the middle in order to provide stability. People are really confused about a dinghy key. It's common practice to wear the key. It goes on board motor and it's got a test. So yes, the key gets worn by somebody on their wrist. Okay, so it's like a wrist, a bracelet, and you attach the key to it. Says there, why did she have the key? Well, she had the key because she was driving. So he thinks that she was driving. Once again, this is supposedly, allegedly coming from a friend who wants to remain anonymous. Lynette's daughter, Carly, painted a different picture of her stepfather. Brian Hooker, in an interview with Fox News, her comments included allegations of alcohol-fueled domestic violence, which Brian has denied through his attorney. He has not been charged with any crime. Okay, so yeah, he wasn't charged with any crime, and that what I read to you back in 2015, he wasn't charged in either. Lynette's the one that actually went to jail, but that does not mean we know everything that happened. So Carly has claimed that Brian Hooker has also become violent towards her mother, which I told you about earlier. Their history of them choking her out and threatening to throw her overboard. So the fact that it's actually happening makes me believe there's more to the story. Mr. Hooker denies any wrongdoing, in particular the allegations recently made by Carly. He has been cooperating with the relevant authorities. Now, so this right here is the attorney that's speaking on Brian's behalf, why he's pretty much in there for questioning, okay? And this right here is the previous domestic assault, okay? The previous domestic violence case that of what happened. Now, speaking of a friend in the family, what we're going to do now is take a look at some of the messages that Brian has sent to a friend. Some so-called friends, that's all I got to say. The other article I read, whoever that person is, that friend, I guess, was kind of sticking up for him, saying, hey, the dinghy shouldn't have been out there in the first place. The conditions were bad, which I haven't replied to that. I already have a reply to that, okay? So he's already saying that she probably was the one driving because the conditions are bad. He's heavier. He sits in the middle. So he's already sound like he's kind of sticking up for him, okay? But let's read about this real quick. The day after his wife disappeared during a nighttime boat ride in the Bahamas, Brian Hooker told a friend that she tried swimming back to the sailboat following her apparent fall overboard, but strong winds pushed them apart pretty quickly. Lynette Hooker, who was from Michigan, has been missing since Sunday. So once again, it tells you everything right here. It also says that Hooker can be held for 48 hours until he has to be either charged or released. Okay, Butler said 99 officials can extend the period to 96 hours if deemed necessary. So they can hold you for 2 days, but If it's necessary, they can go get an extension, all right, and hold you pretty much for another 2 days. Brian Hooker denies any wrongdoing. He previously told authorities that his wife fell from their dinghy Saturday night. So, with the keys. So once again, it recounts the story, all right? Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is what Brian said to his friend, all right? So, Brian Hooker, this is what is repeated right here in the instant message. His friend says, "Did we just see y'all on the news? ABC World News said Lynette fell off the boat." "Yes, brother, I'm afraid so. Off the dinghy in some choppy seas on the way back to the sailboat. The wind blew me away from her and she swam towards the sailboat." You guys picking up you guys picking up already? What was his original story? The original story was she fell off and swam towards shore. Remember? That's the original story. She swam towards shore. And I had all of us thinking, why is she swimming towards shore? Especially, remember this, if the current is going towards the shore, like I said, it would, I guess, make sense. It would move her towards the shore, right? Now he's saying she swam towards the sailboat or the yacht. Shore and yacht's two opposite ways. So which ways was it? All right. So he says she swam towards the sailboat and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly as it was just about sundown. I drifted and tried to paddle with one R for the next 7 hours until I washed up behind the shore of the next island over and was able to get some help finally. We are all still searching. A lot is going on right now, but I thank you for checking on us. Being on the news is a huge burden, and I just had my first ever news organization call me a few minutes ago. Then their friend replies back, "You're in our prayers." Okay. So then he says, "Thank you, friend. Our family is in hell right now. Search and rescue just called and said they had searched so a bunch of areas today and no joy." All right. Says no joy. They are going back out tomorrow, but a storm is coming on Wednesday. So then a friend replies back, "Keep us informed and we can do anything. Let us know." So Brian replies back with a thumbs up. So then a friend replies back the next morning. Okay. The next morning. "I know the pressure on you is hard. I'm praying hard. And if you need to talk or anything, let me know. Do you have a place to stay on an island or are you staying on a boat? Any way I can help, please." So then Brian replies back, "Good morning, Daniel. Thank you for reaching out and supporting us. I got the boat back to Marsh Harbor yesterday after the fire department brought me back my dinghy. I'm on a morning ball at a place called Conch. It's a place called Conch Inn, staying on the boat. My sister and brother-in-law are flying in later this morning to stay for a couple days. I will probably stay with them for a night or two while weather happens, but then I plan on heading back out to the site to continue the search. I will most likely definitely need help in the future, but I just don't know what is yet. I'm trying to take it a day at a time and keep the faith." And it says search and rescue is out again today before some big winds come. All right. So that's what the friends say. Or that's what Brian says. So then the friend replies back, "Are you here to help any way we can?" "Oh, we are here to help any way we can. Currently in Shreveport, but our boat is on the North Shore or Lake Pontchartrain. I believe it's how you pronounce that. He was actually going to buy a sailboat this week and bring both boats home to Shreveport. If you need anything or any help." So then he says, "Congratulations on your sailboat, Captain. Thank you for your kind offers. I will be in touch as events unfold." So that is that. Like I said, the story changed a little bit. So he told his friend that she fell off and started swimming towards the yacht or the sailboat. Okay. So which way was the current going then? Because before she was swimming towards shore. Now she's swimming towards the sailboat. So if the current is going towards shore, that means she had to be swimming towards the current. Get where I'm going? She had to be a very strong swimmer if the knots were at, the original friend said around 25 knots was what the winds was at. So you know how strong of a swimmer she had to be to swim into the current to go towards the sailboat and he lost her and got separated, it doesn't make sense. I am not a boater, but even I know to swim with the current if I happen to fall in. So those two stories, it's not adding up whatsoever. Another thing is they went out to eat before that. So were they drinking? Where's drinks involved? Okay. So if drinks were involved, that somebody's temper get out of hand. Even if she did, let's say, punch him or hit him first while they're in a dinghy, did his temper get out of hand and do something to her and then cause her to go overboard? Yeah, I mean, we'll get into a little bit more of that. So there's also a report of a neighbor of Brian and Lynette's. The neighbor is actually saying that Brian has a switch, that he could be really nice, but if he gets really angry, especially while he's drinking, two different things. There is no medium. He's either really happy or really mad, and looks like allegedly he can be violent. All right. So they're saying there's no in between, with them. This is what this person's saying. So you have one individual who's kind of allegedly, like, it almost looks like he's sticking up for him. Like, hey, the knots are bad. I could see her falling overboard. Maybe she was driving because she's lighter. Then you have another friend who put the messages on blast. Okay. And I think the reason why he did that is because his account of what happened, what he told the friend, is differently than what he told the police and what the media is telling us. All right. Then you have this neighbor who is basically saying, hey, Brian is either happy or he's mad and can do something to you. That's pretty much what the neighbor is saying. All right. So if this is the case, once again, were they drinking? Now, there are reports, I don't know if this is true or not, but there are reports that Brian apparently was seen getting on the dinghy by himself. So if he was seen getting on the dinghy by himself, where was Lynette? And was this getting on the dinghy by himself around that time, 7:30, or was this much later? Because remember, he's in for questioning right now, which I think the authorities saw something to bring him into question. They searched the dinghy, right? So they probably searched it for any kind of evidence, if there's any blood stains or anything like that. And they probably went on the sail yacht too with a warrant to see what's on there. Now, I told you guys in the first video, my theory is either two things happened. Either in a dinghy, they got into an argument. He did something with her. He unalived her, maybe hit her. Something. And then, this, like, entertainment purposes only. I'm not saying he did this, but threw her out in the water. Okay. Threw a flotation device to save her, act like he's saving her, and threw the key. Okay. And then paddled. Now, does the dinghy have a GPS? That's one, because we know the boat has a GPS. Apparently, I guess the GPS on the boat is showing that Brian was on the boat, apparently moving the boat around, I guess, while he alleged that he was out in a dinghy paddling. So you got to remember, apparently it took him like 8-9 hours to get back to shore to report her missing. Okay. 8 to 9 hours. It was around that long till we finally got back to report her missing. So within that 8 or 9 hours, if the motor was working, he could have got back to the boat easily. Now, I read reports that the yacht or the boat was 1.5 miles away from shore. So he could have got there in time. He could have got there quick to the boat. And let's say if they both did get to the boat, could have an argument what happened on the boat. He did something to her then put on a dinghy and then drove off and then, dumped her off somewhere. Your guess is as good as mine. Or was this truly an accident? Okay. And if it was an accident, why didn't he jump in to save her? Why didn't he do something? Why? That's the part I don't get, if this is a truly an accident. If it is an accident, why he has her swimming 2 different ways? That's total opposite. So if this was an accident, right? And apparently, when they took him in for questioning, they cuffed him and they had him on the dinghy. So I'm thinking that they went to maybe the yacht, the sailboat, or whatever it was. And, maybe they were searching with him. Maybe they saw something they didn't like, cuffed him, and put him on the dinghy. This man, Brian, apparently fell over himself while on the dinghy. Now, is it an act? Did he just fall over to show like how easy it could be to fall over? Or did he actually just fall over? But he fell over too after they had him on the dinghy and I guess was bringing him back for custody. Very weird.
Brian arrested Wednesday, but he has not been charged. His attorney saying he also fell overboard while handcuffed in police custody and sustained an injury.
He fell off the boat because the weather was so bad, and they had to rescue him. He has a laceration, an injury, bruising on his knee.
Overnight, Brian's friend Daniel Danforth sharing these Facebook messages he says he exchanged with Brian about Lynette's disappearance. Brian writing, "The wind blew me away from her and she swam towards the sailboat and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly."
I know that they were very experienced in what they did. They had a lot of experience sailing. Some of the things just don't add up. Dinghies don't go very fast. That's not something you really take out in rough seas.
Lynette's daughter Carly previously telling ABC News she had doubts about Brian's account and saying there was turmoil in Brian and Lynette's more than 20-year relationship.
They were in like the healthiest relationship at the end.
ABC News obtaining a 2015 police report detailing an alleged domestic incident between the two, both accusing each other of assault. Police noting that Brian had a bloody nose, taking Lynette into custody, but ultimately neither facing charges.
Another thing that was brought to my attention after I did, or I should say I thought of after I did the first video on this. None of these two had cell phones. None of these two had any sort of device to contact somebody. No cell phone. They went out there and turned their phones off. So when she fell over, she didn't have a phone. And what about him? He didn't have a phone or nothing to call anybody? That is a question I would have loved to ask this man. What did you guys not just plan on having a phone? For you guys who are boaters, do you not carry phones with you? Or any sort of GPS or anything with you to show where you're going or navigating to? Or do you just know off the top of your head, this is where I'm going? I'm just curious. Like I said, I'm not a boater. I know what a dinghy is. I know a sailboat. I know about current. I know about knots, but I'm not a boater. So I don't know. So anybody's watching us as a boater, please elaborate on this. And not only that, please elaborate. Do you believe this story that he's telling anyway? Now, once again, we have this plot twist of the daughter saying, domestic violence past issues. But when you dig into the issues, it was Lynette, the wife, who was arrested because he had a bloody nose. But still, that doesn't mean that he didn't do nothing to her or he didn't cause it. That does not mean that. Okay. We weren't there, so we don't know. But let me know. What do you think happened? Do you think he's officially going to get charged? If they were drinking, is it illegal to operate a boat or a dinghy while drinking? I don't know. You guys tell me. Like I say, I'm not a boater. I don't know. So is it illegal to operate a boat while drinking, like a car? Okay. If you're driving a car and you're drunk and you cause a fatal accident or somebody dies because you're behind the wheel, all right, you're automatically going to get charged. You're going to get charged with some sort of manslaughter, some sort of reckless driving and resulting in death. You're going to get charged with DUI. You're going to get charged with something. So does that apply to boats? If you're driving with somebody and you're in a boat with a motor, okay, no matter what the size is, and a person falls overboard and you were over the limit and you shouldn't have been doing it anyway, get where I'm going? Are you responsible? Can you get charged? That's another question I had too. Hopefully one of you guys can answer that for me. Let me know below. What do you think about this case? Where do you think it's going? I'm going to keep following this, okay? We're going to keep following this. Please comment, like, subscribe, help the channel go bigger than what it is. I am trying to reach 25,000 subscribers. I am almost there. We're almost there. We've reached that in a year. This April has been a year for us. A whole year this April. So please help me get there. And I'm one of the fastest growing YouTube channels in the true crime sector. So thank you so much. And also, hey, comment your city, your state, or the country you're watching from, because you guys know me. And if you don't know me, I try to comment and interact with almost everybody I can. Sometimes the comments get out of hand, but hey, that's the way it is. And now that today for our sponsor, Happy Panda, okay? Happy Panda energy drink. Happy Panda energy drink. This is a all natural drink, okay? All natural, all right? You got B vitamins, L-theanine, electrolytes, only 150 milligrams, which is actually less than a lot of the competitors out there. Now, I'm not really an energy drink person. I hate the way it makes me feel. This one doesn't make me feel that way. I will be honest with you and let you know. Usually I have to drink an energy drink with water or something like that if I am drinking one. This one I can drink straight and I don't get that jittery feeling. And not only that, it helps you focus. It's all natural. It's a nootropic energy drink. Thank you so much. If you do go to Happy Panda like you should and try it out, once again, www.drinkhappypanda.com. And when you get there, type in the code HP Fugitive TV. HP as in Happy Panda, Fugitive TV. Thank you guys. Please watch your surroundings. Watch out for your surroundings, meaning where you're going, and take care of one another. Until next time, I'm out.